Hey there everyone, my name is Ian and welcome to my YouTube channel. In late May, Rhino Records issued the Steven Wilson Dolby Atmos mix of Chicago 2 on Blu-ray. This came as such a welcome surprise to me, as I've always loved this album going back to my high school days. With its rock, R&B, and funk grooves merged with a shimmering horn section, any self-respecting former band kid, such as myself, just has to have some Chicago in his collection. Topped off with the brilliant songwriting that leans toward British bands like the Beatles and their proclivity toward experimentation and references steeped in classical music, Chicago 2 offers the full package for music lovers. Originally issued in 1969, titled simply Chicago, Chicago 2 captures the band from Illinois at their most hard-working. Led at this time by the brilliant and charismatic Terry Kath on guitar and vocals, this lineup also featured Peter Cetera, bass vocals, Robert Lamb, keyboards vocals, Lee Loughnane, trumpet vocals, James Pankow, trombone, Walter Parazader, sax, flute, clarinet, and vocals, and Danny Serafine on drums. Unique to a rock band at this time, Chicago can feel like a full-on orchestra with multiple lead singers, elaborate keyboard and piano textures, rippin' Hendrix-adjacent guitar solos, funky rhythm section, and a horn section that sounds like 10 players instead of only 3. While the debut offering, Chicago Transit Authority, demonstrated a band on the rise to mainstream success, backed by successful singles like Does Anybody Know What Time It Is and Questions 67 and 68, the follow-up, Chicago 2, is a snapshot of a gigging band who maybe found a few days of spare time to record in the studio before running off to play the next show in their busy schedule. Of course, Chicago 2 would only hasten the band's breakthrough, with songs like Make Me Smile, Color My World, and 25 or 6 to 4, all landing in the top 10 of the Billboard charts. However, it is the double album format of their first 4 albums, as well as the multiple distinct writers within the band, that allowed Chicago to indulge in their more diverse, progressive inclinations. This album features 3 extended song suites, including Ballet for a Girl in Buchanan, Memories of Love, and It Better End Soon, all of which showcase the eclecticism of musical styles, from pop to Stravinsky to prog, and even some Zappa-esque jazz fusion, with many points charted in between. Of course, Chicago have always had a history of presenting their music in multi-channel. In fact, their first 10 studio albums were released in quadraphonic, and Chicago 2 itself had a subsequent 2003 5.1 mix. It seems curious that when the Steven Wilson remix of this album was issued in 2017, it was released in stereo only and on CD, and not multi-channel. Thankfully, 8 years later, Rhino Records have rectified this situation with the release of this new Blu-ray, which contains high-resolution versions of the vintage quadraphonic mix, the 2003 5.1 mix, Wilson's 2017 stereo mix, and of course, Wilson's new 2025 Dolby Atmos mix. So, was it worth the wait? Let's discuss. I'll be honest, I haven't heard the original mix of this album in over 10 years. Stay tuned for my comments on the new Atmos mix, but since the original stereo mix is not included on this Blu-ray, I'm going to turn it over to my good buddy and Chicago enthusiast, Mike. Take it away, Mikey.
Hello, it's your pal Mike here. Ian asked if I could say a few words commenting from the original mix versus the Steven Wilson mix. Now, to starters, this is an album that is extremely important to me. It's a top 3 of all time. It shows one of my favorite bands approaching their peak, doing what they do best, with immaculate songwriting, amazing singing and vocal harmonies. You get the best horn section in the business, plus just amazing playing from everybody, and especially the songwriting. The songwriting is just really special on this album. You know, as much as I love this album and has been dear to my heart since I was a kid, the sound quality's never been perfect. It really does sound its age, and some things have been pretty muffled and buried in the mix. Steven Wilson has done an amazing job with his remix of getting out all of the details. In a lot of ways, it's like hearing the album for the very first time. When you listen to Steven Wilson's mix, you can really pick up a lot of new stuff. Steven Wilson has shed light on a lot of Terry Kath's rhythm guitar playing, Peter Cetera's bass, some of Robert Land's piano working, and Seraphine's drums. There's a lot of things in this new remix that I've straight up never heard before, and that is one of the best things about this kind of listening experience, is picking up on new stuff and something you already love. It's almost like building a deeper love for this same album. Two big examples for me are Terry's rhythm playing in Make Me Smile, which is killer, and the muted trumpet parts in the PM Morning and Memories of Love tracks. I have never heard that before, and it's great. I really applaud Steven for this particular remix. I think it's one of his best that he's ever done, and I sure as heck hope that he does more of the catalog like this, because the Chicago album has never sounded this clean and this exciting.
So, my memory of the original mix of this album was that it was quite murky and not particularly punchy. Steven Wilson's mix retains the warm signature character of that original 1969 mix, yet he opens it up and makes it much more dynamic, revealing clarity and plenty of power. It especially sounds great cranked up, window-shakingly loud. Guitar, keyboards, drums, and bass are positioned front, left, and right, with some lead guitar overdubs and a lot of toms and overheads coming from the heights. Vocals are clear and distinctly centered in shocking clarity and nuance. Drums especially are crisp and snappy. The horn section is mostly stomping at the back of your head, however, sometimes woodwinds, saxes, and some higher brass like trumpet can end up in your front speakers. Occasionally, a guitar or horn solo will float to the back, but it's often in the service of making the mix experience feel spacious and three-dimensional. It's not a gimmick, but rather a literal foreground-background mix translation. The Dolby Atmos mix is tasteful and well considered. It honors the original mix, but Wilson still manages to have some fun. I can hear things like the hand claps in the opening cut moving in, circling around the room. Tambourine in West Virginia Fantasies floats in your heights and back speakers, and the repeated guitar ostinato that closes Wake Up Sunshine similarly peeks out of all four corners of your room. For me, though, it's the feeling like I'm totally immersed in the environment of this album, like I'm in the studio with the band, that I appreciate the most about this new Dolby Atmos mix. If you're a fan of this band and classic 70s bands in general, I don't think you'll be disappointed. However, for Atmos enthusiasts, I think it's a must. This is one of my very favorite Atmos mixes of the year, and it might be one of my favorite multi-channel mixes, period. It's a total feast for the ears. Don't forget to leave me a comment. Have you had a chance to hear Steven Wilson's Chicago 2 Dolby Atmos mix? If not, do you think you might pick it up? This release is available affordably from many major outlets. In my opinion, it's worth your time and hard-earned money to get a hold of it. I just hope that Rhino and Chicago plan to work with Wilson in the very near future. My personal request would be a Wilsonized Chicago Transit Authority, because I like that album just about as much as I like this one, and the Chicago Quadio box is long out of print. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see future reviews and updates from me. Until then, see you later.